What's a really awkward situation that everyone can relate with? When you start to tell a story in a group but in middle of sentence realize that no one is actually listening, and ever so slowly you get quiet and hope no one took notice. Edit. Well, seems someone _did_ take notice this time. I asked myself a few times what might be wrong with me BC of this, but I also could imagine I'm not the only one this is happening. But I don't think that sometimes G is wrong with you. It's just all too often that people just don't think so much. I think people in general mean no harm. They maybe were in this moment just not as emphatic, or don't have the antenna in the everyday hustle and bustle to notice something that doesn't jump in the face with a neon sign, figuratively speaking. Or, as for this case, notice someone's contribution that is not bursting with self-confidence or provides the perfect introduction, but perhaps acts rather a bit introverted. When they don't realize that you were getting quiet, at first you think good, nobody noticed, but seconds later you start to feel bad that nobody was really paying attention to you, not even hearing that you were making noises, and that feels awful. When you've had multiple interactions with someone but you can't remember their name, but it's gone too far to admit you've forgotten it, so you just have to call them love or mate forever. I have a trick for this. Start being more loving to them, eventually getting into relationship. As this moves further, propose and they'll say yes. And then when you're getting married, wait till the pastor turns and says, "And you person's name. Marry your name." And boom, you now know their name. What if we're having sex and she tells me to say her name? No, you misunderstand. This is why sex comes after marriage. Standing there while two people talk about something you don't know about. Even worse when you're wanting to leave the conversation but feel like you need to have an excuse to leave. When you try to contribute to a conversation and someone cuts you off multiple times, and you patiently wait for your turn to speak, even though it already was. But by the time the air is clear, the subject has already changed and what you were going to say is now irrelevant. I used to be a habitual cutter-offer when I was younger. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just excited for what I had to say. I've reformed that behavior now, but if I notice this happening to someone else, I'll make sure to call attention to the person trying to talk. "What was that, John?" or something along those lines to make sure everyone is heard. And he sat there, so deflated, with his sentence incomplete, for he'd falteringly waited for his moment. Bittersweet. He was beaten, he was broken, he had shared his inner mind, when the interruption spoken, left him silently behind. But he couldn't just forget it, and he'd never let it go. He would make them all regret it. He will, please continue, bro. When you're having a conversation with someone and you don't hear what they say, so you ask them to repeat and they do, but you still don't hear it, and ask them to repeat again and they do, and you still don't know what they said. Do you ask them to repeat again, and maybe still not hear it? Pretend you heard it and nod your head and hope it's an appropriate response? Stab yourself in the eye with a pen to create a diversion and change the subject. Just laugh, say, "Yeah," and hope they didn't just tell you their dad just died. When you're walking past coworker and you've already said hello earlier, everyone's making that weird flat smile, saying, "Hello," or "How are you," to somebody and getting 100% ignored. Worse when someone else you know is there too and notices you getting ignored. When you're finishing up the checkout and the cashier puts the notes on top of the receipt and then coins on top of that, then the next person steps up and you're fumbling, trying to disassemble the stack in your hand. Gather your shopping, say thanks and move away at the same time. In the UK it's extra sucky because you bag your groceries yourself. If you aren't quick enough, you have to do all of what you mentioned as well as quickly finish the packing while everyone stares at you waiting for you to hurry. When I was a cashier, I made it a point to hand them their hand them their currency, and unless requested otherwise, I would put the receipt in the bag for this very reason. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's mother starts yelling at your friend. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's father walks in only wearing underwear. The opposite as well, having a friend over and your parents do this. Or worse, your parents try involve your friend in the argument asking them if they would do that. Would their parents put up with it? So fucked up. That awkward moment where you and somebody else try to let each other speak but you both try speak at the same time and just keep failing. That would be a Skype Teams moment. It's happened to us countless times. Especially since we're all now working from home. When you think someone waves at you so you wave back but they were waving at someone behind you. Not long ago at church we were asked to turn and greet people. I turned around and the guy said hi to me and stuck his hand out to shake. I went for it and realized he was talking to the woman beside me. She and I both ended up with a hand in his hand at the same time trying to shake it. They both looked at me and I quickly turned around and pretended it didn't happen, which made it more awkward. And then rest of the service I couldn't stop laughing about it. This is standard for me. You ever clogged a toilet in somewhere that wasn't your house? Thank guys. My inbox is now clogged with all of your oversized shit stories. Can't wait to binge read all of it. Edit 2. Guys, please stop sending stories. I don't think my inbox could survive more of this. It's on intense medication RN. Edit 3. Inbox funeral later at 3 p.m. Y'all are invited. Oh man. I show up to pick her up for our first date. I asked if I could use her toilet before we left, and only had to pee. Speaking of, why the hell doesn't everyone have a plunger? It's a common item, and there really isn't a reason not to have one. Most people I know have the logic that because clogs rarely happen they don't bother buying a plunger. That's like not putting an alarm in a bank because people barely break into banks nowadays. When you walk out of the store empty-handed, feeling like you've just stole something. It's worse if you make eye contact with the cashier. Or worse, the security guy. Walking through a doorway only to catch your clothes on the handle and have it slingshot you backwards. Happens only when you're angry. When you reply to a stranger who says hello, but then realize they were on the phone and not speaking to you. Happened to me just yesterday and I didn't get any sleep last night as I couldn't stop reliving the moment. AirPods have made this one so much more common. It's really annoying, especially if you work in retail. When you're saying goodbye to someone, and then you both end up walking in the same direction. Or when you turn and walk into a wall with people watching. Edit. My first awards ever. So glad my forms of awkwardness resonate with others. Also when you realize you've forgotten something and need to turn around. But you don't want to just turn around abruptly because that would make you look insane. So you do a little performance where you get your phone out, pretend to check a message, sort of mime, aha, and then turn around, or cross the street, and then turn around to throw any observers off the scent. Ever drag your shoe across a tile floor and have it make a loud, wet, fart sound, so everyone in the room looks at you? Then you insist it was your shoe and try to make the sound again. But nothing happens. Yeah, that. And leather couches. When you say a funny joke but all you get is silence. I did this on a Zoom staff meeting yesterday. It was worse online, somehow. Being called on to answer a question you really have no idea how to answer. I used to just say I don't know FML. Can't speak for you, but whenever I said I don't know, my teachers would go on a rant and say something like, why don't you know? You should know, or the old classic, at least try. And then when I try, I say something stupid and everyone starts laughing and the teacher says, that's not right. God bless, I'm not in school anymore. When you're walking and almost trip for no reason and look back at the invisible stick that you tripped on. When you go for a hug but the other person goes for a handshake. So you start with a handshake but do a weird hug at the same time with your hands in each other's crotches. I just skip all that and go right for the crotch. When someone asks what's going on, and you respond, good, you? How are you? I'm fine. What about you? Great, you? Could be worse. And you? That's great. I'm fine, thanks. And you? That's nice. I'm okay, thanks. And you? Oh, not too bad. You alright? I'm having a pretty good day, actually. You? Living the dream? But what about ya? The fake smile on your face when you receive a terrible gift. Wanted the Smash Mouth CD with All Star on it when I was a kid. My aunt wound up getting me the Len CD with Steal My Sunshine on it. Apparently I hadn't heard the song yet back then, even though it was all over the radio. My disappointment was immeasurable and my day was ruined. I faked a half smile. Decades later I love Steal My Sunshine and I should have been happy. Not being able to pick up when someone else is completely disinterested in what you are talking about. You haven't said anything in 45 minutes, are you okay? More like, you haven't said anything in 45 minutes. I guess I gave you a lot to think about. Do you have any questions? Quote, I'm afraid to say anything that might prolong this conversation. Watching a sex scene with your parents. Visited my aunt and uncle 7 years ago and we were hanging out watching TV. My uncle clicks through channels and stops on Harold and Kumar escape from Guantanamo Bay. Within minutes it's the shaved pussy party scene. My aunt and uncle sit there in silence watching, not saying anything until the scene is over while I sweat bullets. If you put an acorn between my butt cheeks I could have cracked it. A few months ago I visit again. Uncle flips through channels. It's Starship Troopers. Within minutes it's a sex scene and the boobies are out. I'm not visiting anymore. Greater than I'm not visiting anymore. Went ahead and moved in, then. The only way to get regular sex scene downtime with the aunt and uncle. When your mom leaves you with some distant relatives whom you have never met. Bonus points if they say, you remember me. Quote, no, because I was fucking 2 months old when we met. I'm 40 in a few days. And my mom will still occasionally ask me if I remember bizarre relatives I've never heard of. Do you remember Brenda? Quote, no. You know, we went to her Dave's house for his son's christening. No. She came to our Darren's wedding. She wore a blue hat. No. Anyway, she's dead. Oh, I see. When you are video chatting, start talking and because of the delay you interrupt each other all the time. Stop talking. Start again. Interrupt the other one. Stop talking. Never-ending story. Someone showing everyone in the group something on their phone and waiting until it is your turn. Even worse if it never makes it to you and you have to pretend you're not secretly dying to know what it is. Go to wash your hands and the water comes out at 1,000 miles an hour. Splashing your crotch. You are, of course, at work. When you're walking on a sidewalk with 2 other friends and you're the person that does not fit, so you have to stay behind the monsieur. Edit. Had a typo in it behind. Also, someone gave me my first award on Reddit. Woohoo. Having happy birthday sung to you. Just smile, motherfucker. Think happy thoughts. Think happy thoughts. Quote, when you're walking behind someone that has a slightly slower pace than you, so you start to pass them, but then have that awkward moment when you're walking next to them before you cut in front of the monsieur. Worse is when it's also a narrow corridor, and you can see people coming towards you from ahead and you trying to do math to figure out if you'll be able to overtake the slow walker without running into those people like a car. When you're on a public bathroom and someone tries to open the door even though it's locked. The worst is when you say it's occupied and then they try opening it even harder. Or when they gaze at you through the 1 centimeter gap between the door and partition. That is the worst. Such a violation. How dare you make eye contact with me while I'm shamefully trying to shit in a public bathroom, monsieur. I never lock the door. This is a great way to meet new people. Having your stomach rumble in the middle of a quiet class meeting. Edit. Both in college and at store meetings. My go-to-cover-up strategy was to furiously flip through pages of notes to try and drown it out. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.